close your eyes and we'll chant Om 3 times out. Breathing in. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So today, I thought we could go back to one of our ancestors on the lineage, Vyasa Maharishi's son, Sukha Brahman. Vyasa was a Brahmajani, and he edited the Vedas completely. He is the one who wrote the Mahabharata, in which the Bhagavad Gita is also there. He had a lot to do with the Mahabharata, Itihasa, and the Puranas. But that which was a massive job, especially those days, because not only you're not writing it like a story, you have to write it in such a way that it will remain for posterity, giving all the values, the mantras hidden in it, the rahasyas in it, all that has to be kept intact without losing its essence. And not only that, it has to be, those days they wrote on palm leaves, so those had to be preserved. It had to be taught to disciples through Shruti, through hearing. They cannot sit and write it down anywhere. So all that was done by Vyasa. And when he came to a certain end of writing all this, one day Narada came to see him. And Narada looked at him and he said, "You don't look very happy. You've done such tremendous work. You ought to feel successful because you've achieved so much. So why are you looking a little off color?" So Vyasa said, "I really don't know why. I've done all this, but somewhere I feel incomplete. I don't feel that I'm completely fulfilled." So Narada said, thought for a second, then he said, "See, you have written about the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. That is, you have talked so much about Karma Yoga in that. Then you have written about the editing the Vedas, and that is about the Jnana Yoga. But what you haven't done is that you have not written about Bhakti. And that is why you feel this void inside you." Then Vyasa said, "So what shall I do now?" Narada said, "Write the Srimad Bhagavatam." And Vyasa said, "I don't know anything about it. I don't feel these feelings. I'm not completely in touch with my emotions." Put it like that. He was completely on the Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga path, had never experienced Bhakti. So Narada smiles at him and he says, "Don't worry, it will come by itself." So then Vyasa does a tapas for 100 years. And then he is doing a major yajna. He has gathered all the yajna samana, the wood and the ghee and everything that was necessary. He is sitting down to do the yajna itself, the homa, the havan. And at that time, an Apsara comes in and just walks around for a few minutes. Now her name is Gritachi. So he looks at her and suddenly, without uh, expecting it, he feels attracted to her. The minute he feels attracted to her, he tells himself, my God, what is happening to me? And he's watching um, his seminal fluid fell on one of the logs of wood which has kept for puja, which he did not realize. And then he puts it into the fire. Meantime, the Apsara who had come there, Gritachi, she got scared also. And she took the form of a parrot and she flew away. Now, what happened to Vyasa? He continued with the yajna and he restrained himself because he said, I should not have such a thought. And when that log of wood, which contained this thing, was burnt, out of that fire came a beautiful baby. And he was later named as Sukha. Sukha means parrot. So yesterday I sent you a photo. He has a head of a parrot. And one of the reasons, there are 3-4 reasons. One of the reasons he has a parrot head is because the mother, Gritachi, it was because of her moving around that the seminal fluid fell into that Homakunda. And she flew away with a parrot face, like a parrot. She went away like as if she was a bird out of the way. So this Vyasa had other children also. This was his only son, Brahmin child. He had 2 other Kshatriya sons and a Shudra son also. I'm sure you know who they were. If you can't remember, I'll tell you. Dhritarashtra and Pandu were his sons, Kshatriyas, through Amba and Ambalika in the Mahabharata. And when both of them did not like this man, you see, what happened was that their mother-in-law was Satyavati. And Satyavati was a fairly ambitious woman. She wanted the dynasty to continue. And it was because of her that Bhishma became celibate. Now, she then was very desperate to get the other 2 sons married. And she had 2 sons, Vichitravirya and Chitrangada. Now, Bhishma went out of his way and sort of went for the Swayamvara, but kidnapped the daughters of the Kashi king, 3 daughters, Amba, Ambika, Ambalika. Now, along the way, Amba expressed her interest that she said, I'm interested in somebody else. I've thought of him as my husband. And I cannot, with the same mind, marry Vichitravirya. So the Bhishma thought he was very noble. He sent her back to the Shalva king with whom she was in love. That king sent her back. He said, now that this man has kidnapped you in the middle of the big gathering and taken you home, if I take you back here, even though he's fond of her, he said, what will be my standing in society? People will think he's come for leftovers. So she comes back to Bhishma, and Vichitravirya, to whom she was supposed to get married to, Bhishma tells him, okay, now she's back, you please marry her. And he says, she's already in love with somebody else. I will not marry her. I cannot marry somebody like that. So she is desperate now. She asks Bhishma to marry her. And Bhishma says, I'm sorry, but I've taken this vow of celibacy. And so I cannot marry you. But that's another story altogether. We are not going into that now. So what happens is Chitrangada fights with a Gandharva king and he dies. Vichitra Virya was always weak and he had, they say, consumption. Consumption is actually tuberculosis. Maybe that's what he had. And on the day he was to be crowned, he dies. So now these two girls, Ambika and Ambalika, they are left widows and there is nobody else to succeed because Bhishma is not getting married anyway. So Satyavati feels bad and also guilty that she was the cause practically for all this. And she goes and apologizes to Bhishma and she says, please get married. And he says, no, I made my vow and I stand by it. You can't keep changing your sankalpa to make somebody feel nice or because situations have changed. So then she didn't succeed. Then she remembered that she had a son who was Vyasa. Now, Vyasa was a rishi, and there is a stipulation in the Shastra that in extraordinary situations, when a woman is left a widow and there is an absolute need for a child, uh, like in this situation where there is somebody needed to be a king and take care of the people. So she calls Satyavati calls Vyasa. By then he's an old rishi, and she tells him, will you please sleep with my first daughter-in-law, that is Ambika. So he says, I don't like it because any child that is born out of this will create trouble because it is all uh, in the consanguineous, that is same family it will be. But since you as a mother ask me, okay, so, but I can only sleep 3 times. After that, I have to go away. The reason they said that sages could do it was because sages have no passion. They are not interested in the land, in the power, in the kingdom, or they are not attached. They do their work and they go away. So there is no problem with that. So he sleeps that night with Ambika. And she looks at him and she's so scared because he's, you could call him, I would say ugly, but when a person is old and he's a sage and he's with beard and everything, and there's a young girl, very young girl, and she got scared, she closed her eyes. And when she closed her eyes, the when Vyasa came out, he said to her, to Satyavati, he said, the work is over, but when she has a child, because she closed the eyes, she would get a child that will be blind. Then she said, then please sleep with my other daughter-in-law. So the next night he sleeps with the other daughter-in-law. And she becomes pale when she sees this man because he's still old, even to her, Ambalika. And he tells Satyavati, this is the situation. The child will be born because she was pale when she slept there. So child will be born as with that white vitiligo, white patches. That is, so he was called Pandu, meaning it would be a white patched person. And Satyavati is terribly upset. She goes and tells Ambika, you better behave yourself. One or the other has to sleep with him and please be a little more respectful because we can't have a blind prince or a prince who's looking all full of patches. It won't work. So Amba passed the buck to Ambalika. Ambalika said, no, you go. And finally, they both decided that they will ask the maid servant to sleep with him. Maid servant was a Shudra. And when the maid servant said yes, and when she slept with this man, she felt very privileged to be able to carry the child of a rishi. So she was very respectful. So the child that was born of this maid was called Vidura. And he was the wisest among the family. And he was made as a minister when Dhritarashtra later became king. And he has done, there are a lot of references to him, including a talk that he gives to Dhritarashtra about niti, justice, and royal ways of looking at things. That book is called Vidura Niti. Then what happens is the Rishi goes away. He says, only 3 times I'm allowed. Please don't call me back again. And he goes away. Now, so these three were Vyasa's children by default, so to speak. Two Kshatriyas, one Shudra, and he wanted a child that could follow his customs, the tradition and lineage and the lifestyle, somebody who would carry on his spiritual legacy. So that is why he did this puja, but because the Havan, but because he was so, he had been extremely restrained, but at that particular moment he was attracted to this woman Gritachi. You must remember that sometimes it is the divine sankalpa that makes some of these happen to people who are extremely self-restrained, but at some time that there is no control, and that is also because the divine wishes somebody to be born in that field with some of the characteristics of Vishnu. So then when this child is born, this child is called Vyasa because he was called Krishna Dvaipayana first. Because this was Satyavati's first son. Before all this happened, when she was just a fisherwoman. And he was born on an island, so he was called Krishna Dvaipayana, dark. So Krishna Dvaipayana means one who was born in an island. Dvaipa means, Dvipa is an island. So he was born there, and as soon as he was born, he grew up and he left, saying, because he came with the Brahman knowledge in him. And he left and he said he is going off on his meditation and to carry on doing the Vedas and the studies that group of people did. So that's how he came back. And it is said that Vyasa was an amsha of Vishnu. That is why you will say Vyasaya Vishnu Rupaya. You have it in the Sahasranamam. So what happens is, after all this, Vyasa is wanting a child, and this child is born, and the child comes out of the fire. And when that child is born, he is born with all the Vedas in him already. So he is born with the Brahman knowledge. More than knowledge, the experience of Brahman is an amsha of Parabrahman, the Paramatma. So Vyasa was very happy having a child after so many years. And the child grew up being very, very brilliant, he always walked around naked from the time he was a child till he was an old person, because he had no consciousness of the body at all. He was like being part of Brahman. He identified with everything around him. There was no discrimination between him and anybody else or anything else in nature. So around 5 years, he tells his father, I'm going off to meditate into the forest. And Vyasa was terribly worried and upset. Till now, he wasn't bothered about anything. Now he got worried because he said, if this boy goes off like this at 5 years into the forest, how will he sustain himself? How will he protect himself from the wild animals? So he tells him, don't go, don't go. After some time, when you're a little older, then you can go. I myself will take you. You don't go. But the boy said, no, I have no attachment here. I'm going, he said. And he went off. And now suddenly Vyasa was filled with grief because the child went to the separation. So he ran behind the child and he said, Sukha, Sukha, come back. Sukha, come back, he said. Where are you? And the Bhagavatam says, Srimad Bhagavatam says that when he called like that, all the trees around answered. They said, we are here, we are here. That goes to show that when a person is a Brahmajnani and is in a state of complete, not personally identified with the body, but with the Atma, and the Atma is merged with the Paramatma, you become like Paramatma. There are no boundaries between you and something else, whether it's a person, a tree, an animal, anything. So as he passes by, his vibration reaches the trees. Whatever he comes near, that vibration goes to those parts. And they all say, we are here, because they're answering as if they are him. Because they are him, because his vibration is in them as he passes. And that is how they show that he is a Brahmajnani. Now, he was also, another story about him is that why he has that parrot face. 2, 3 stories. Once Parvati asks Shiva why he is wearing a garland of skulls. So he tells her, this is all your previous birth skulls, and I'm just keeping it out of affection for you. So immediately she asks him, that means I've died and born many times? He said, yes. Then he says, how come only I am dying and not you? So he says, that is because I know the rahasya, the secret of immortality. So she asks him, I too want to learn it. So he said, it's very, very secret, but let us sit in a place where nobody else can hear. I can't talk about it in public. So he uses damaru, that sound, so that everybody around there knew that he wanted some privacy. They all left the place. And he tells her, you sit down, I'll tell you, but as you are saying, I'll say it like a story. You must just say, like that, so that I know you're paying attention. I won't ask you, have you heard, have you heard? So she said, okay. And he started saying it, and then she kept saying, like that. Once the story was over, Shiva realizes that Parvati had slept off in between. Then he wonders who is the person who said, and then he looks around. He saw a parrot egg in which the parrot had just hatched. And because it sees everything quiet, this baby parrot has sat quietly and listened to the whole thing. And he kept saying, Now Shiva is quite angry. He wants to kill it. He chases it. The tiny baby parrot flies. It goes into Vyasa's hermitage. The wife is sitting with her mouth open. The parrot flies into the mouth of Vyasa's wife and goes into her womb. And Shiva comes there and asks the bird to come out, and the bird refuses. And what does the bird say? If I come out again, I will get into the world of attachment and Maya. I only want moksha. So Shiva begs it, he doesn't come out. It stays there for 12 years, we are told. And Vyasa's wife is in great pain. Finally, Vyasa prayed to Vishnu to help. And at that time, Krishna avatar was going on. So Krishna comes to help him, and he tells the bird, come out. And he says that he is eligible for moksha. There is no attachment and nobody can kill him because he has listened to this rahasya. If you listen to this particular rahasya, you become immortal. So when he is born, he comes out as a human being. Now, there is yet another story that Vyasa Rishi and his wife Pinjala was the daughter of Jabali, and Jabali was the person who brought the Charvaka idea into great renown. On Monday, we'll be doing Charvaka. And so they both came from very illustrious rishis. And they say that on one occasion, Pinjala was sitting there just like that. And there was another wife of Vyasa who was of a community that was called Sukha. So this child was born from that uh, lady, and that's why he was called Sukha. Then there is a third story. You can take whichever story you like. They're all telling you about similar meanings, and I'll tell you the meaning later. There was a parrot that used to carry messages between Radha and Krishna. And because Krishna used to say Radhe, Radhe when he called her, this bird also, this parrot used to say, you know how parrots imitate, it used to say Radhe, Radhe. Then one day, Radha takes that bird, the parrot, puts it on her hand, and she says, Putra, child, Krishnam Vada. Say Krishna, Krishna. Don't say Radha, Radha. And in this way, she initiates that parrot into the Krishna mantra. Now, what happens when he heard the name Radha and he kept doing the Krishna mantra? The vibration of that went into his cells. And when he was born in the next birth, whenever he heard the name Radha, he would go off into Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 6 months. So much later, when he recites the Bhagavatam, he never mentioned Radha's name because he was afraid that he would go off into Samadhi in between telling the story. And Parikshit has only 7 days to live. Then, you know, those days, especially when something is very close to your heart, like the Guru Mantra, sometimes like your husband's name, which is even now you'll see in other communities, Guru's name, the father-in-law, mother-in-law's name, they don't say it out because it's very precious and it's very personal to you. So you don't talk about this. So he never ever said it out in the Bhagavatam or anywhere else. But it is always said that just um, like oil is hidden in the butter, Radha's glories are hidden in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And when Radha left the world, he wanted to go with us, but she asked him to propagate the Bhagavatam. And when the story of Radha and Krishna will be told, he would be present always, so he would not miss her. So it was at this time that when he was walking around, he heard Shiva telling Parvati the Hari Katha along with that story. Now let's go to Parikshit. During the war, Parikshit was in his mother's womb, Uttara's womb. Uttara was the daughter-in-law of Arjuna. Her husband was Abhimanyu, who was killed by all the warriors in the Kaurava army while he was fighting single-handed. That was the first time they broke the rules of the war in the Mahabharata. And from there, it was a downhill movement. So now you had Abhimanyu, and he was married to Uttara, and his baby was in fetus was in Uttara's womb. So that boy, the child, that baby is Krishna's grandson as well as Arjuna's grandson, because Arjuna is married to Krishna's sister, grandnephew. And Ashwatthama was Drona's son. Drona was the guru of the Kauravas and Pandavas. So what happens is Ashwatthama, his son, always feels that Drona has a special corner for Arjuna, because Arjuna was a good archer and he had a lot of respect for his guru. And gurus are not supposed to be partial. So because Arjuna was good, he taught him much more. His son was Ashwatthama, he loved him, but he didn't teach him all the rahasyas and the archery techniques that he taught Arjuna, because he knew that Ashwatthama could be a little impetuous. That is, he can make a sudden impulsive decision and he might damage people because he has no control over himself in that sense. So what does he do? The father this boy goes on harassing the father. Why do you teach uh, Arjuna everything? You don't teach me anything. You don't teach me anything. And finally, one day, he taught the boy the Narayanastra. And he said, you can use it only once. So this boy Ashwatthama, he was friendly with Duryodhana because Duryodhana, he grew up in poverty, you see, Drona and his family, which is why he went as a teacher to the Kauravas and Pandavas. So when he saw Duryodhana was a prince and he was angry with Arjuna, he was jealous of Arjuna. So immediately sided with Duryodhana, who used that friendship to bring up his own cause. So what happens is towards the end of the war, when so many of the Kauravas are dead and many of them are getting routed, he wants to do a good turn for Duryodhana, whom he likes in his own way. So he goes, and just before that time, he sends the Narayanastra. And at that time, Krishna tells the Pandavas, Narayanastra is very, very powerful. So he tells the Pandavas, just sit down quietly, don't stand up and fight. Just lie down and surrender. So they all lay down and they surrendered, and the Astra went back to Narayana. Ashwatthama was very, very angry. He said, you can't trust even your own father these days, because he said he's initiating me, but it didn't do anything at all. It was a useless thing. So when he went back, the person he bumped into was Vyasa. So Vyasa asked him what happened. So he started grumbling. He said, see, my father cheated me by telling me he is giving me the Narayanastra, and it didn't kill the Pandavas at all. And Vyasa said, no, that's not the way it is. He gave you the Narayanastra. He told you it will work only once. You didn't bother to ask him anything about the rest. Narayanastra will never hit at somebody that surrenders to him. And it was sent against Narayana himself, who was driving the chariot for Arjuna. So the Astra will not work against Krishna or any of the people who are in his side who have surrendered to the Astra. So then he is very upset, and then he thinks to himself, if I can't kill them like that, let me kill them all with the Brahmastra, which is like many times a major atom bomb. It can wipe out the entire earth like that. So he sends that against, because Abhimanyu is dead now, and the Pandava children are also dead because they have gone in the night and killed them. So now Ashwatthama thinks, let me kill this child in the womb of Uttara. So he sends the Brahmastra there, and she has a severe pain, and she runs to Krishna. Krishna's sister Subhadra, he is very fond of. She also comes there and she says, you said that my child will rule this country. Now look at what is happening. So Krishna enters the womb of Uttara, and this infant sees a light going round and round and round. So he's wondering, who's this light? What is this light? So when he is born, he has a questioning mind, pariksha, like that Parikshit. He says, I wonder what it was. It was there in his unconscious mind. So he was called Parikshit. Now, when everybody died and the war was over, the Mahabharata war, Parikshit became the king. He was a very good king, very great king. He set everything right. So much had been lost. And by then the Pandavas also went away, gave up their bodies on the Himalayas, and Parikshit was ruling very well. One day he went out hunting, and he got separated from his soldiers, and he was very, very thirsty. So he went to a hermitage. A rishi was in meditation. He asks that man, please give me some water. The rishi is in meditation, so he doesn't even move. And because he was frustrated, he looks around, he sees a dead snake, takes it, puts it on the neck of that rishi, and he goes away home. When the rishi's son comes and sees this, he is very, very angry. How could somebody insult my father? So he says, just like you put this dead snake on my father's head, you will die in 7 days of a snake bite. One of the famous snakes called Takshaka will come and sting you. Now Parikshit came to know that he's going to die in 7 days. So what does he do? He calls all the sages around, all the gurus and the Brahmins and the people who are wise. And he asked them to sit there and he said, tell me, what does a man who is in the last stages of his life, what does he do? And different people say different things. They say you can give so much dana, but you have already given so much dana. So now what to do? You don't have enough time for doing yajnas and things like that. At that time, Sukha Brahman walks into the place where the rishis are sitting. So before that, let me go back to Vyasa, which I left. Vyasa runs behind his son and then he grieves that the son has gone away. And in that grief, certain words come to his mouth. And then he, this pour out of his mouth and he thinks to himself, what do these words, where are they coming from? What does it mean? So anyway, he said, even if I don't know what it's all about, let me teach my sishyas. So he teaches them, they go to the forest and they sit and they are repeating these verses, so they learn it by heart. Then where they are saying, Sukha Brahman is sitting in meditation. So he hears this, it was so beautiful. He comes to these sishyas and he says, where did you learn this? So they said, our guru taught it to us. He said, I want to know more about it. It's a story of Krishna, basically Vishnu, and then eventually Krishna. So they said, we don't know the meaning. You come back with us to the Guru's house. So he comes back home and learns the stanzas and the meaning from Veda Vyasa. And after that period is over, he goes back again to the forest. And again, Vyasa goes into great depression. And then again, words come out of him. Again, he teaches the Sishyas. Again, they go to the forest and they are chanting. And this boy Sukha, who's nearby, is so attracted to the beauty of the words that he comes back to the father's hermitage. This goes on many times. So in the process, what happens is Veda Vyasa learns to be separated from his son. And you know, anything that happens many, many times, the second time it happens, it's not as intense as the first time. The 10th time is not as intense even as the 5th time. So slowly, slowly, he becomes detached, Veda Vyasa. And as he becomes detached, the entire Bhagavatam pours out of his mouth. And it is Sukha Brahman who takes that and goes later to teach Parikshit. So when Parikshit asks him what to do, what Sukha Brahman does is, first of all, he gives him, this is the Bhagavatam, first of all, he makes a figure of the Paramatma. And he says, Aksharam Brahman Paramam. That is, Brahman or the Paramatma or the supreme force, the supreme divine consciousness is the Paramam, means the supreme. That is Aksharam. Aksharam means that cannot be destroyed. Kshara means to destroy. Aksharam means cannot be destroyed. That's why a word is called Akshara, is an alphabet. Why is an alphabet cannot be destroyed? Because it comes out of a vibration in space. And when you say anything, those vibrations go back into space. That is why you must say good things when you're talking. And that is why they say when a mother is pregnant, let her say a japa for any deity that she likes and let her be happy, so that these aksharas, these vibrations will not only envelop her, it will envelop the fetus in the child's mother's womb also. So he says, Aksharam Brahmam Paramam. Then he says, after showing that, he says, this Parabrahman which is also the Swabhava of the Atman, the Jivatman. Swabhava means the true disposition. Now, he says inside this Jivatman, that is, the Jivatman has 6 dimensions of consciousness. These are the 6 chakras. These are in the subtle body, not in the Sthula Sharira. These chakras are different lokas, they are different dimensions. Bhur, Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Mahaha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. The Satyam is the Sahasrar chakra on the head. So he says, that is why whenever you want to find the Parabrahman, you don't have to go outside, you go within yourself, because all these dimensions are within you also, just the same as it is outside. So when you go deep in, you will find each of these dimensions, you will have different experiences in those dimensions, different from each other. And when you come to the Sahasrar chakra, then you will understand what is the Paramatma. And you will see that time your own Atma is the Paramatma and it's Aksharam. That is, it cannot be destroyed. What gets destroyed, he says, is your body. Then he says, see, there is one action that the Parabrahman does. He is limitless. He was there yesterday, he is there today, he will be there tomorrow. He is eternal. He is beyond space and time. And when you go to the Parabrahman, when you merge with the Parabrahman, then you will realize that the Jivatman is of the same Swabhava. Then he says, this Paramatma becomes the whole of manifestation. He remains as the Paramatma eternal, and over himself, he becomes the manifestation without losing anything of himself. And to become the manifestation, he alienates himself from himself because he is the eternal. He moves away from himself and he becomes the manifestation. In other words, he sacrifices himself without losing anything to become the manifestation. And that is what the first yajna is all about. When the Paramatma, who is eternal, spaceless, limitless, limits himself by sacrificing a portion of himself so that the whole world can come into being, worlds. So when we do the Homa, we are imitating that same situation that the Paramatma went through. And so he is called the Paramapurusha, or is called the Yajna Purusha. That is the unborn eternal Hari. So this is told by Sukha Brahman to Parikshit. And he tells Parikshit also, Parikshit asks him, how does the Lord with the power of his Maya create, sustain and dissolve all these universes? So Sukha says, the same question was asked by Narada to Brahma, not Brahman, Brahma. So Narada tells Brahma, as far as I know, I can see you. You are the beginning and end in everything because you are the creator. And I see it going away also. So when the origin and the end is in you, Brahma, why do you need to do great tapas separately? Brahma tells him, I have all these powers, but these powers are by his unconquerable Maya. He says he creates it by his Maya Shakti. And it is because of this Maya Shakti that you think I am creating also, that you think I am the creator. He's telling Narada. And he says, the Paramatman wanted to manifest his Maya. He wanted to, because it was within him. He wanted it as a potential. He wanted to bring it out. So he became time, Kala, because that consciousness was beyond time and space. So what did he do? He became time because there was nothing else, only him. And he became effectiveness, and that was called karma. And he became space. And all these creations have, they are, and they will exist, continue to exist from the Purusha himself. He said, when I, that is Brahma, came out of the navel of Vishnu, he found that all the Homa things, the material that Vishnu was laying out to for the major sacrifice that we just talked about, was produced out of Vishnu himself because there was nothing else there. So he used this as to for the sacrifice to himself, and it is so inexplicable that neither Shiva nor Narada or nor Brahma can understand his real nature. But infatuated by his Maya, we all can understand only and grasp only up to the point of our intelligence. But he is not to, you cannot grasp him with your intelligence, nor with your Indras. He is pure. He is the innermost essence of everything. He is Satyam, the truth. He is pure spirit. He doesn't have a body, no origin. He is eternal above the gunas. And then he tells him, now Parikshit, why do you want to identify your body as yourself? You just realize that you are that spirit. Identify with your Atma. This Atma, which is the same as the Paramatma. And don't bother about anything else. The serpent will come and bite the body. It doesn't bite your Atma. And what is your body? Your body is made of the Panchabhutas. So realize to yourself that the body that is made of the Panchabhutas is being bitten, and it decays because of the Panchabhutas. Leave it. But you are not the body, you are the Atma. So what happens is, he does that, and by the time the serpent comes and bites him, he has already gone into Samadhi, and having gone into Samadhi, he he doesn't even realize the snake has bitten him, and the Atma is left free. So there are two things that we talk about. One is called a fixed destiny, and the other one is called an articulated destiny. Fixed destiny is what you come with. You know, so many of you might have realized that sometime in life you come, your family thinks you're going to be a doctor or an engineer or whatever it is, some things, and then suddenly you find in life something turns you around and you go and become a yoga instructor, or you go off on the spiritual path, or you're going to be a doctor, and then you find something happens and it turns you into a businessman. Something like that happens. So fixed destiny is what you come with, your karmas, and you live that way and you go that way. For articulated destiny, realization is needed. If you have a very strong will, that's what Swami Satyananda used to say also. If you are strong-willed, you have the power to change your fixed destiny in association with a good guru or a good upaguru. So you have to pray for that if you want something higher. And who to pray to? There are so many deities, there are so many devatas. So that will be told to you by the guru. This is the mantra that you get. And for that guru to tell you, the guru has to be evaluated, not by you. He has to be evaluated by his guru to evaluate you, because he will evaluate you before he will realize whether you're eligible to be given a particular mantra or sadhana. But to evaluate you, he has to be evaluated by his guru. And what is this evaluation that happens is, Once the guru is evaluated by his guru, then after that he becomes the guru. He becomes his own guru. So why do you go to a guru? Because you are trying to learn the guru tattvam. What is the guru tattvam? These are the principal elements associated with the guru. And what are the principal elements? You don't uh, see him or relate to him as a person. His physical body or your emotional relationship with him is of no consequence. It just means that you're a person and he's another person. And don't expect him to see you as a physical person either. He becomes like a medium for what his guru has poured into him, so that he pours that into you. And in the process, his body becomes your body, his mind is your mind. And what are the elements, principal elements you will learn from the guru? If the guru has a Shanta Bhava, you will learn to be Shanta, peaceful. If he is a Mauna Guru, you will understand and learn from him what exactly is Mauna. As we were discussing one day, Mauna has nothing to do with not speaking. It is a time when even your mind becomes still, no thoughts. Then there is yet another way where if you don't have a guru, or if you have a specific guru, you say, I want to meet you, you call me. So if your intensity is so much and your sincerity is so authentic, nothing can prevent the energy of the guru from coming to you. Because why does it happen? Because the guru tattvam is everywhere. It's in you also. It is not awakened. So the one example of this is Dhruva. His fixed destiny was that he wanted to sit on his father's lap. He wanted to be king there like his other brother. But what happened to him? He met Narada Rishi on the way because his stepmother said something to him, and Narada gave him um, the mantra diksha, and Narada was able to give him the sadhana also to do, which he practiced very faithfully. So what he attracted was the key elements in Narada, the bhakti of Narada also, and which Narada got from his guru. And so like this, the lineage is continued alive. A guru can have many disciples, but a guru will look for one disciple, for example, one or two disciples who will carry on the spirit of what he learned from his guru. And that's not academic. You may not know the practices, you may not know the techniques of yoga, but you're carrying some energy as you go on. And when you do that particular mantra with that sincerity and authenticity, you will feel that the guru is standing in front. It is like avahana of some devata. And then you have another thing, it's called the grace of the guru. Even if your meditation is not all that wonderful, if it's not pakka also, the guru has the compassion to synchronize with the disciple so that you will follow his mission. So this is the thing that you have to understand: fixed destiny and articulated destiny. Now, fixed destiny, Parikshit, he was going to be the king. But what happened to him? The articulated destiny happened because he met Narada, no, Sukha Brahman, sorry. And Sukha Brahman came and gave him the technique, and he also changed his mind. If there was any fear of dying, if there was any remorse about something he did sometime, something left incomplete, he continued talking to to Parikshit slowly until his whole mind, Parikshit's mind, became synchronous, had a synchronicity with Sukha Brahman's mind. And then he was able to teach him the Brahma Vidya, which helped him to meditate on his Atma and not identify with the body. And he got moksha through that process. Now that it's 9 o'clock, If you have any questions, you can ask. There is a little more, but then this I will do it on Monday along with Charvaka. Anything more anybody wants? Hari Om.
Hari Om Swami. Hari Om Swami.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om Swami.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Sridhar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. So Monday next, right?
Yes, Swamiji, Monday.
Any questions?
If any questions are there, I'll post to you, Swamiji.
Post it to me. Okay. That's good. Remember, Sukha Brahman is also your ancestor in the lineage. Swami Satyananda's lineage goes right back to, that's why it comes in the shlokas which we say in the morning in the ashram. Sukha Brahman is invoked. Hari Om.